Welcome to the Redacted Apostate. My name is Nicole,
And I'm Carl.
and today we're going to talk about gurus, but not the kind that you think of, more of the pod sphere YouTube medical gurus.
Like the brosphere? Is that what you mean? Like
Kind of. I think the brosphere, the manosphere,
they feel intertwined.
they're intertwined, yeah. Specifically, Andrew Huberman and Brian Johnson. And
okay.
There's several Brian Johnsons. I don't know if you know. That's a very common name.
Oh, no. So which Brian Johnson are we talking about?
I know we can talk about a few. So there's Brian Johnson, the liver king that eats raw liver and got exposed. And then there's Brian Johnson, the vampire.
Right.
So I was going to talk about Brian Johnson, the vampire.
And isn't Brian Johnson also like the lead singer for AC/DC as well?
I think so. I think there's musician.
That's the reason I remember his name so easily is because that's the name of the lead singer of AC/DC.
We should look up.
Akadaka.
Who's the lead singer of AC/DC?
Brian Johnson.
Not that I don't believe you, but I don't believe you. Like singer
This is my life.
of AC/DC. Akadaka. Brian Johnson, you were right. I believe you now.
All right. Well, I'm done. I'll see you later.
What do they say? Trust but verify.
Yeah. Especially if I say it. Hi, my name's Carl. I'm looking that up.
Is your name really Carl?
I don't believe you. Carl with a K. You didn't mention that, did you?
Yeah. All right.
So let's talk about these individuals.
And I have listened to them on and off over the last couple of years.
Especially Brian Johnson. Not Brian Johnson, but Brian Johnson.
Yeah, and Andrew Huberman.
Yeah.
I would listen to him. There was a couple of podcasts that I would listen to, and I was like, oh my God, this guy's a douchewagon.
Right. Which one?
In my opinion. Andrew Huberman.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Like, there was just some things that he was just so gross about. And then finally it just got too gross. I just couldn't listen anymore.
Right.
But Brian Johnson, I have this morbid fascination with.
No, okay. So I think what we should do is we should also kind of explain who we're talking about at what time, because we have Brian Johnson and Andrew Huberman.
So Brian Johnson, the vampire.
Right.
I have a morbid curiosity.
Okay, so let's also, because we understand who you're talking about.
Do we?
But they might not.
Well, we're going to get into who these people are.
Oh, are we?
Yeah.
I thought we were just going to start talking about them.
And how much?
Ad hominem, you know.
Ad hominem.
Yeah.
Hominem ad.
Hominem. Yeah.
How much we hate them. Actually, I don't hate
anybody.
I don't hate
these. Yeah.
either one of
they
these
just don't
guys.
care.
They're in a weird space. They're in a weird thing that we have to endure. And this is not new for humanity because
It's old snake oil salesman.
yeah. So you go back 150 years and you've got snake oil salesmen.
Yeah. You can go back to ancient Greece, and even then they were selling miracle cures, like the sweat of the people.
The gladiators.
The gladiators,
right.
was medicinal, and like teeth of some people were considered like aphrodisiacs. I mean, it's just crazy.
Yeah, and you're thinking not long ago we would have doctors advocating cigarette smoking as healthy.
It's as healthy as vitamin C.
Yeah. So
yeah,
this is human nature looking for miracle cures. Human nature looking for what was that? Ponce de Leon looking for the fountain of youth.
The fountain of youth. Yeah.
So this constant search for answers, and that's the spiritual, how people get caught in cults, but also physical health. People get caught up in these cult mentalities.
Yeah. Well, it's like the guy that was like an avid runner, and he ran himself into a heart attack. Like that was his whole persona back in the 80s, was that, you just run and you have perfect. Oh, no. But he did have a cult following as well.
Yeah.
My God.
Mm-hmm.
No, there was a real guy, and this was back in the 80s, and the news would talk about him all the time because he was supposed to be this model of perfect health, and he would run every day, which back in the 80s was an unusual thing. You didn't see people running every day, or if they were training. So you had that, and then you had everybody else.
Yeah.
And he was talking about how running was this, super healthy. And then he would get people following him running, and then he had a heart attack because he was running too much.
Oh,
Yeah. And died
wow.
from it. So, yeah, there's that too. There's the flip side of it.
Anything to extremes, right?
Of course.
So Andrew Huberman has one of the most popular podcasts out there. And his whole deal early on, and I think he started the podcast pre-pandemic, but then during the pandemic, I think
Exploded, yeah.
everything kind of exploded.
And also, too, that makes sense because people are trying to look for healthy situations. Because during the pandemic, everybody was running, everybody was exercising, because what else are you going to do?
Right, and
with
you're
your life?
looking for ways to improve your mental health, and he does some of that too.
Right.
Authority comes from that he is a Stanford neuroscience professor, and that what gives him his authority. And as humans, having authority and clout is really important.
Wait a minute, wasn't Stanford where they did the Stanford experiment?
Right.
So he came from a school where
They abuse people.
they abused people as
Science. Science.
well, it's also and I know where you're going with this, which is the other experiment too, where people were brought in and they had a person in a white lab coat.
I don't think that was Stanford.
No. I know. It's just another experiment. But and they were told to press a button and it would electrify the person in the other room, and you could hear them screaming.
Right.
And then they said, well, if you go all the way to 10, it's a lethal dose. And basically they were like, well, how far would the person spin the dial and press the button if a person in a white lab coat told them
to do it? Yeah.
And I think it was 70% of the people went to 10 and pressed the button.
Yeah.
And then the person in the next room screamed and then didn't anymore. And it was all staged. There was no other, the person in the other room was just an actor that was, screaming whenever a light came on in the room. And the guy in the white lab coat was not a doctor. And the person that did it never asked, are you a doctor? Are you a trained doctor? What are your credentials?
Right.
What am I actually doing here? So people don't ask for when it comes to authority. And I think that's what you're talking about, is that concept of, oh, he's Stanford. He came from Stanford. He's a neuroscientist.
Science. Yeah. So he knows everything. He's so smart. And he comes across with that way of speaking that he has all the answers also.
Yeah.
He's very articulate, gets that back part of your brain where it's like, oh, must listen to this human. This human knows what we speak of. And he has all the hallmarkers of that. So it's understandable why he would be so popular and why people would follow him.
Right.
He started that Huberman Lab podcast, and I think his idea initially was to make science accessible
Right.
to other non-science folks.
Right.
And it was for wellness, well-being, using his knowledge of neuroscience to help people and help listeners. And I think the intent when he started was good, but I think from the very beginning, he was hawking AG1 grains. And so right there, it's kind of like, what? A little sketchy.
Yeah. And And this is where there's this fine line, in my opinion, which is if you are trying to help people and that's your whole goal, like, can you afford a living if you're just helping people and not having, ad revenue and sponsorships and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's like if you're just doing a podcast to get to the point where you're making enough money to live off of, and then that's your thing, is extremely difficult. And I'm just talking about the podcast numbers, not talking about any of the sponsorships or ad revenue that's associated with it.
So
You have to have tens of millions of views to.
yeah, which he has. So
I'm talking about at the beginning, though. So if at the beginning he had a sponsorship deal or to talk about it, that's a big deal. That's huge.
but he's still a neuroscience professor. So he still teaches.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And researches. So that salary is what, between $150,000 and $200,000 a year.
We're assuming, yeah.
In the Bay Area, that's not a lot of money.
Yeah.
So that's like a
It's low level. Yeah.
low mid,
Yeah. He's on the lower end of the middle class.
Yeah, exactly.
For the Bay Area.
For the Bay Area.
Yeah. You move to Atlanta and you're mid to mid upper ish. Yeah.
With that salary.
Yeah.
So then he did the podcast, and so he's already got his salary from Stanford. And then the podcast started, and you're right, when you're first starting, he's probably not making any money, but he could have immediately gone in and said yes and had an immediate following and an immediate sponsorship.
Right.
I don't know. It's so hard to know early.
Right.
When people first start, it's such a nebulous, weird thing. I don't know. But I think from the very beginning he was hawking AG1 coins.
Mm-hmm.
I really do.
And when you say from the beginning, you mean from the early years, not from like episode 1,
He might have been.
Yeah. Because he would have had the clout.
Yeah. So he could have gone to AG Greens and said, hey, I wrote a book. I don't know if he's written a book or not, but
I'm a neuroscientist.
I'm a neuroscientist. Yeah. I'm a good speaker. I'm a good looking guy. I'm going to start a podcast. Will you sponsor me? And they would have been like, yeah, we see the writing on the wall. Yeah, we can do that. Yeah. So,
and I think AG1 at the time was also just like anybody and everybody. As long as you would just say something positive, they were given sponsorship. I think most of their marketing is most of the money that they were spending was on marketing and not on product development or anything like that.
Yeah. And the owner of AG1 is a fugitive from New Zealand.
Wait. Okay.
Yeah.
Where does he live now?
Arizona or somewhere. I don't know.
Don't they have extradition rights?
No, because he was white collar crime. So he fled New Zealand and came to the United States. And
because we need more of those people here.
And New Zealand's like, what are you going to do?
And America's like, fine, you can do business.
The owner of AG Greens, he's like, I love America. You can do anything you want. And it's true because in the United States, there's no real process for supplementation. Like anyone can put a supplement and there's not like...
No, you just put a tag and you say these statements are not authorized from the FDA or whatever.
Exactly.
And then you're covered.
And you're fine.
Yeah. And you put that in super fine print, like where you need a electron tunneling microscope to read it.
Right.
It's written on the atomic level.
Yeah.
And, hey, I'm covered. Just because you couldn't see it doesn't mean it's my fault.
Yeah. And so he's been doing this podcast talking about science. And I've actually got some really good information from his podcast, useful information. But I think lately he's really, I don't know, gone off the deep end in terms of his hawking.
Well, it's the issue that I have.
He's a hawk tooth lady of the He's the Hawk 2 lady.
I think he was. I think he was the original Hawk Tua lady. Jeez, yeah, that's a whole nother conversation to go over her. God, okay, focus. All right. And it's the issue that I always have with these individuals is the question of where do you go next, right? Because how many times can you talk about sleep in a podcast? Apparently, with him, you can say it like you can talk about 150, 200 times, and it's different every time. So it's kind of like, oh, well, what do we talk about now? Because, there's brainstorming sessions. You got to figure out what you're going to talk about and the research and everything else. And it's like, okay, we talked about them. Well, what are we going to say now this time? It's like, I don't know. We'll just throw this in here. This is fringe, and this could be real. So we got to always, it's the issue that you get with doing any type of content creation is always trying to make the next thing better, right? Always got to get that 1 out of 10. Always 1 out of 10. And it's the same way I have a feeling with him, which is, well, we did this, but how can we make it more interesting? We had 3 million views last time. How are we going to get 4 million views? How are we going to get that extra 1 million views? You just can't sit down and just talk about it.
Yeah.
You have to bring something different to the table. And that difference could be false information, bad information, but we're bringing in the numbers. And that's I think my biggest issue with medical advice on YouTube and everything else is the fact that when they turn it into a company, when they turn it into a business where they have to get the numbers to stay alive.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, he's making bank.
Right.
He is making the numbers.
But he has to pay people now, right?
Yeah.
So he has people doing work. So he has to keep their salaries going too. So yeah, it's got to be self-perpetuating.
Yeah.
And that's where and I'm not saying that's true with everybody, but it seems to be that's the common cause is.
See, I don't know. I really there's that Dr. Mike.
And I don't feel that he's worrying about the numbers. Like he's not going like, I need 10 million views to stay alive here. He's like, I've got my practice. I'm good. I'm doing this because I want real information out there.
Or he likes to play video games.
Yeah. Yeah. Honestly. And he wants to do that too as a live stream too. Cause that's his thing. And I'm like, yeah. And there's always always the people that I like always have secondary channels that play video games.
Yeah.
Which is so weird. Does Andrew have a secondary channel where he just plays video games?
He's
a loser.
I don't know. He probably thinks video games are brain rot and you should be out hiking in nature. I have no idea.
Well, I can virtually do that.
You can virtually hike in nature.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't.
Well, I think where it also gets dangerous is that now he has created this cult-like following, and it's called the Huber Sphere, and they have another thing called the Huber Husbands, where women listen to the podcast and then they get their husbands to do whatever he says.
Stop being pieces of crap.
Yeah. Become bros.
I mean, didn't you try that on me too? There was a few things that you were like getting me to do that.
Yeah, that's right. When I first, because the work on your circadian rhythm was interesting, where you should get sunlight in the morning and in the midday.
What do bugs in the ground have to do with anything?
Not cicadas, circadian.
Oh, sorry. I get confused. I didn't get a lot of sleep last night.
That was another thing that we had in 2024 was the bazillions of those bugs.
Yeah. Brazilians.
The azerations of these bugs that were everywhere.
The Brazilian azerations.
Yeah. So anyway.
We're getting loopy.
I don't know. I know.
Yeah, but okay. So he has his brosphere. I mean his
Huber Sphere.
Right? And and most of these people do. They have these large groups of people that, like the taters, the tater haters that follow the
Follow everything he says.
the sex offender, yeah.
Yep.
And
He's not a sex offender. Who's a sex offender?
yeah, that's what he's. Yeah, that's what he's in jail for, was for sex.
Oh, we're talking about
Taters.
Taters. Oh, I thought it was like Andrew Huberman. No, he's not.
Well, not yet. We don't know. That's my opinion. I don't think he does.
No.
Don't think he is. I don't think he doesn't seem that way. He doesn't have that feel to him.
No, he's a shit boyfriend.
Oh, is he?
Oh yeah. Yeah. He's a shithead boyfriend.
Yeah. Can you imagine, like, if you're not doing the right thing, like he probably goes spouts all the nonsense, like.
I could see it on the podcast before all of this stuff came out with his ex-girlfriends, all their ex-girlfriend drama. I would watch his podcast and I'd be like, he has issues, but we all have issues, right? We all have things that are wrong with us. And so I'm like, okay, this dude has issues around.
But my issues aren't powered by millions of dollars and a group of people behind me saying that I'm right either. And that's the issue. And that's always the question that I have with cult leaders is this immaculate conception, or is this, over time?
I think this is over time.
Right. So any of the issues that he does have, he has, like I said, I'm not trying to make it out to be like, this guy's a piece of crap because of this. Like, no, we all have our personality issues, but it's when yours is amplified by fame and money. Mm-hmm. So like, that's why I'm like, I don't want fame. I just want money. Right. Because like, I could see what would happen to me if I had a bunch of people behind me saying, oh, you're the best, you're the best, you're the best.
What would happen to you?
I'd feel good about myself.
For the first time.
Ever.
You wouldn't be dead inside anymore.
It's too close. Too soon and too close. No, but like, you have like these random thoughts, like, and I'm sure people.
I have a random thoughts. If I was a cult leader, how would I act?
Right. Yeah, I always think about that. If I had control over 1,000 people, what would I do? but you always had these ideas, like if you could make any rule in the world, right, that everybody had to follow, what would it be? And most people,
excellent to each other.
No, you wouldn't. It would be draconian. It'd be like, I'm gonna ban all esports scooters, e-scooters, right? Like crazy things that people say, and that's the point, right? So as soon as you get money and power, those weird thoughts are now have, impetus. Like I have people behind me telling me I can do this and I should do this, and then you do these weird things, and so it's not really that these personality traits are inherently bad. It's just this amplification of it is my issue with these group of people.
Yeah.
Like the vampire.
The vampire's cult following is pretty big.
I warned you about that.
Oh yeah. No, I knew. I just have this morbid fascination with him. But Andrew Huberman, I think Andrew Huberman started out with really good intent, and then over time let money cloud his judgment. So because early on he was saying, so now he's doing those glasses you wear, these like weird glasses.
The blue blocker
glasses.
Yes.
But early in his podcast, he's a neuroscientist. He knows this. Those don't do anything.
Yes.
It's just pseudoscience.
Right.
But now he's like, these are, and you've got him. And I was watching one reporter who was saying those same exact glasses that he's selling for like $130, $150, you can buy on Temu. Exactly the same glasses.
For like $5.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
For nothing.
Yeah.
But because they're Andrew Huberman and he's making a good chunk of money off of this promotional thing. So not only is he making his salary at Stanford, he's making money from the podcast. He's making money off of YouTube. He's making
off the product
sales commissions off of this product that people are buying, when he knows that this product is pseudoscience. But
Yeah.
because he says that smoking's good for you,
Has he ever said that?
no.
Okay, I'm just making
No.
sure.
I'm just making a callback to
But-
what
but
we talked about earlier.
Yeah, but that's yeah, I know. I got the call back. But you said it twice now in reference to him, so I was just kind of like, and this is the thing about him, is I could see him saying something like that.
Yeah.
If Morris, Phillips Morris, said, we're going to give you a couple $1 million to say smoking is good, he'd be like, smoking's great, you should do it,
Yeah.
And so that's
Can
what
you
I mean.
imagine
That's
the
why I
guy
had to ask, is because this is the kind of guy that
That
seems
would
like
do
he
that.
would.
for money?
And yep, exactly right.
Uh,
And that's my issue, is that
Yeah.
when you hear something outlandish, you believe it because it could be true.
Yeah, and because he comes off with, he's got so much authority, so much conviction in the way that he speaks, it's easy to fall for,
And the numbers too.
and millions of people following him.
Because how could he have 2 million people watching him and listening to him, and him just tell lies and pseudoscience or misinformation? And I think that's what a lot of trap that people get involved in with as well is, oh my God, he's got 3 million people watching, so he's got to be saying the truth. He has to have, there's no way he would say a lie because everybody would call him out on it.
Yeah.
It's that's the idea of the cult mentality is you can tell a lie to your face and everybody goes, oh, well, that's not what he meant. He meant something different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I-
Do your own research. That's my favorite one.
Oh, yeah.
They
dear.
they say that all the time too.
But buy our product. Buy AG1 Greens. That's full of lead and ran by a fugitive
Yeah.
from New Zealand.
From New Zealand.
That's just so funny.
It's
to me.
America. We import our crime.
From New Zealand.
But you run a business and everybody showers you with praise.
Yeah.
No matter how much laws you break or how much you hurt people. It's like, oh yeah, we're hurting someone, we're hurting people, but I am a business person. Oh, well then, sorry.
And
Continue.
Okay, so right, maybe Huberman says, yeah, I'm a business person. I'm not a neuroscientist anymore.
Well, then quit your job at Stanford
Yeah.
and stop saying that you're a neuroscientist from Stanford on your main page.
But yeah, it's more about, for him, it's the financial revenue, I think. And so he's willing to do these fringe wellness type things. And that's an easy trap for people to fall into, this cult-like following.
Yeah, especially with health.
Yeah.
Especially with health.
All right, so now we're going to talk about, on the flip side, is Brian Johnson. The reason why I put these
Okay,
two
which Brian
together-
Johnson? Sorry.
Vampire.
Okay.
Vampire Brian Johnson.
Okay.
Because there's a video of Brian Johnson, the vampire, going, the best thing for your health. And then he holds up the AG Greens and he's like, not this shit. Throws it out. So I feel like maybe it's in my head.
We all need more lead in our diet. Come on.
Yeah. But is there this Brian Johnson, Andrew Huberman standoff?
I don't think so.
Probably not.
I don't think so. I think that because the thing about it is that, okay, well, let's first of all talk about who is Brian Johnson.
Yeah. Okay, now Brian Johnson came across my radar because he grew up a Mormon and went on a mission to Peru and is was very Mormon, and then realized he was in a cult and woke up. And when he woke up, he lost his family.
Oh, right.
And his waking up process was pretty traumatic for him. He talks a lot about that. And I think some of that is the reasons why he does what he does. You have to think of that waking up process is so brutal for all of us when we go through it. And so I felt for him. I was like, wow, he's been through a lot.
Yeah.
He helped one of his sons to wake up also, to realize that they were in a cult. And so his son didn't go on a Mormon mission and joined him in his pursuit of health. Now, the interesting thing, I'm just kind of making the connection right now as we're talking. I was raised to believe that I would never die,
Right.
that I would live forever. And
So your health isn't important.
well, yeah, that's one.
Yeah.
But then you go through this traumatic waking up process from being in a cult. And then you're like, now what? I'm going to die. I need to switch things up.
Right.
Like I need, and if I had millions of dollars like Brian Johnson, the vampire does, I could see myself going down that road. He, being Mormon, and Mormons believe in wealth. It's kind of a wealth gospel is a big part of what they believe. Yeah. And so he started businesses early on, and then when he was in his 30s, sold one of his businesses. And so he's very wealthy because of that. And so he's taking that wealth to form this longevity protocol.
Yep.
And he's using himself as the guinea pig to do that.
Right.
And I think it's part of the waking up process. So he woke up from realizing that he was in a cult to selling the company, losing his family. Mm-hmm. And Mormons also believe in the afterlife too. So when you die as a Mormon, depending on where you were baptized or where you had your consecration or whatever they call it, it's what world you go to and who you get to dominate in the afterlife. But it's this like complicated afterlife. But essentially it's an afterlife when you're going to live forever as a god. That's the long and short of it.
Yeah, yeah.
And then that is taken away from you, and you know that this is a finite amount of time. And you're going to make it last as long as you can.
Right.
And I think that's kind of where he's coming from.
Interesting. So you think that this longevity thing that he's going down is based off of kind of coming out of the cult, and I mean, it makes sense to me. I mean, it does track.
I can see that.
Yeah.
And I think that's why I started listening to him and following his journey. Mm. Now, this guy takes things to the extreme.
Yes.
So why I call him a vampire is because he was taking his son's blood and infusing it into himself.
Right.
And like old school, wasn't there the vampire woman that was bricked up, and she was taking the blood from the virgins in the little village that she was ruler over. I mean, this is like historical thing that happened. Yeah. And finally the village was like, you can't keep killing our young women, and they walled her up. It's like, okay, Brian Johnson, someone tried that 1,000 years ago, ended up walled up. So clearly that doesn't
Brian
work.
Johnson goes out at night with a straw like,
I'm sucking your blood.
Is this okay? Do you consent?
Have you seen a picture of him?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
He looks weirder and weirder.
Oh, he looks so weird.
Yeah.
Because he's obsessed with longevity and finding the secrets to longevity.
And so the issue, and there's, we've had this a lot of discussions about, because we would take walks and talk about what he's kind of discovered and all this other stuff. And I'm just like, man, this guy's super dangerous, and it's going to get really, really bad if he keeps going unchecked. And it's starting to look that way. Because what you're going to do is you're going to get a group of people that follow him without question. Mm-hmm. And that's the issue, is that the good thing about Brian Johnson is that he is actually going to other doctors to look at what causes aging and what treatments you can do, right? But maybe he's going to go see a neuroscientist from Stanford and might get bad information. And that's the issue here, is that if the search for knowledge can lead you down dangerous paths, right? Because if you're just always looking for knowledge, if you're always looking for the truth, how do you filter out what is the truth when you hear it from someone that seems like they know what they're talking about.
And I don't think Brian Johnson he's not like Andrew Huberman. Andrew Huberman comes across, he knows what he's talking about.
Yeah.
Brian Johnson doesn't have that air
No,
about him.
he looks like he wants your kidney
Yeah, exactly. But
when he talks to you.
you using that?
How about this right here?
Yeah,
Can I take that?
You using it? You
Yeah.
using it?
Are you gonna eat that?
Because I'd like that.
Because I could use that. Yeah, he does. He has this, and there was like another influencer that went to go visit him, and he showed up to the door. That he rang Brian Johnson's door. Brian Johnson opens the door, and he has like this green goo thing in his hands, and he just doesn't welcome him. He goes, "Would you like a drink?" And I'm just like, holy crap. Run. and the guy says, "What's in it?" Right, which is the right question.
Right question, yeah. What is this?
And Brian Johnson tells him.
Brian's just like, drink it.
Yeah.
Drink it now.
He pulls out a gun on him.
Drink it now. And the other YouTuber is like, okay.
So in their defense, Brian Johnson tells them everything that's in it. And the guy's like, that sounds disgusting.
Yeah.
Right? Because it was full of stuff that you just normally wouldn't consume.
It was like
in a
olive
smoothie.
oil with something else.
Yeah. And the guy was like, okay, but nothing in there was dangerous. It was just sounded disgusting.
Yeah.
The guy drank it and went, this is actually good. And my body feels like it wants more of it. And he's like, yeah, this is because at that stage of what Brian Johnson was kind of talking about was, what can you do every day? What are the small stuff that you can do every day that can help your health? And that's what we used to talk about the most, which is, you know, if you add a little bit of this to your diet, and it can help. And we're like, okay, that makes sense. And when you look it up, it's like, does it help? It doesn't hurt.
Yeah.
So that's okay.
Yeah.
Removing your plasma and having it cleaned and scrubbed and put back into your body again, that's not something you would do every day, and that is what Brian Johnson is doing. And yeah,
I think Brian Johnson went from being in a cult to now being a cult leader.
yeah,
Like I think he's
nailed it.
Yeah.
Because that's what I told you.
Yeah.
I'm just like, oh, so he's just going from a member to a leader.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's I saw that coming like a year ago.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The longevity cult, the cult of deliverance, the cult of extending your life, doing whatever it takes. In the notes here, it says DIY gene therapy.
Yeah. He also reminds me a lot of the Bulletproof Coffee guy.
Yeah.
In that, so the Bulletproof Coffee guy, and the reason why I call him this is the only one good idea, which is that I think what he was doing is he was like, I don't know if it was Tibet or the Andes, it doesn't matter, but it was some like, you know, spiritual place, and they were drinking coffee with butter in it.
Yak butter
Specifically. Yeah, thank you. And he would drink it and feel energy and would feel good about it, and it didn't taste terrible either.
Mm-hmm.
And so he was like, seems like a real good thing, and it's like hacking your DNA or hacking your biohacking. Yeah. And so he has a whole line of MCT oil, which is derived from coconut fat. And what it's really good for is it is a oil that does very well for your brain. And there's links to that. It actually does this. And so that's his whole thing is Bulletproof Coffee. And so he got a win and then went off the rails with everything else. And,
I was part of his newsletter.
Yeah.
Back when the kids were babies.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was a long time ago.
Yeah.
It was a long time ago. Because I'm always interested in these new emerging people that come out. I'm oddly fascinated. So I'm oddly fascinated with Brian Johnson. When he first hit the scene in like 2021, it was like, who is this guy? Why is he doing this?
Right.
And then his whole connection to the Mormon cult was like, oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then he had his whole waking up process and him being very open about that waking up process. And then now where we are today with he's a vampire.
I think reptilian. So I'm thinking alien reptilian. So he's gonna rip off his face on camera one day because he's gonna be like,
Wouldn't that be
I've
exciting?
ascended.
I am the one.
I am Quasar.
But all this leads to media literacy when it comes to health. And there's so many health, and TikTok is way worse. We were watching the video from Dr. Mike on YouTube about some TikToker going on TikTok saying there's 5 things every man should do. And
Every 5 drugs every man should be on.
And then his like, no, you need media literacy. Like one of those things that you said every man should be actually could cause more harm to most men.
Yes.
So
like 99% of men should not take it because it can cause cardiovascular disease.
yeah, so
Kind of a big deal.
so you see these things, these clips of where Huberman's saying this thing of all people who have ADHD should do X, or all people on the autism spectrum should do Y, and you think, oh yeah, I'm doing that, and then you get caught in that cycle, right? You do the thing and it doesn't help.
Right. Or you get a psychosomatic reaction to it saying, it did help me. Oh yeah, look, my concentration is up when
And
it
then
actually
you're spending
doesn't.
tons of money.
Yeah.
So how could you be media literate when it comes to health?
That's a really good point. Okay. And it's also, I will have to say, media literacy when it comes to a lot of resources and a lot of information is easy to do. When it comes to health, it's very difficult to have good media literacy for health. And the reason being is you can take something very simple like wine and do research on it, and or coffee. So let's just take 2 very simple things that that we consume on a daily basis, hourly when it comes to wine.
Right.
So, you see a report that says coffee is good for your heart,
Right.
right? Or coffee can lower the risks of Alzheimer's. And these are both titles that I have seen recently, right? And then you see another one that says coffee can cause lack of sleep, which increases the risks of Alzheimer's. These are both real studies that have real information.
But for people who don't like to look at data,
Yeah.
I don't want to read those stupid things.
Exactly.
Like that's the last thing I want to do with my free time is read one of those stupid studies,
Right.
where you can see the data is very clearly skewed one way and there's no real way to know.
And it's not peer reviewed either.
Yeah,
and then you have to figure out what peer reviewed means and then figure out if it is peer reviewed and then have to go to these studies, which are usually behind a paywall.
Listen,
Yeah. And nobody's got time for that.
I ain't got time for that. I ain't doing that. So how do you protect yourself? I mean, how do you...
I feel it's easy. I
Okay.
feel it's really easy.
Oh, okay. So tell me.
So
Follow you?
yeah.
life.
So do everything that I say. So one is never trust anybody that says they have the answers for everything. Okay. 2, never trust anybody that says a product will fix something, because there is no product anywhere that will fix anything.
Ozempic.
It has a lot of problems, and it doesn't fix your overweight issue. It just fixes you being overweight. Those are 2 separate things. You stop taking Ozempic, you gain the weight back. It doesn't fix anything. It just causes something else to happen, right? So Ozempic is not a fix for being overweight. It just stops you from being overweight, right? Which are two separate issues in my mind, right? But there is no product out there. You think about it. What product fixes exactly the problem and causes no issues? There is no drug. Being a vegetarian does not stop you from getting cancer, right? All these things that we say you should do every single day if you want to stop A or B will not fix A or B, right? Solutions to problems that are medically related typically are a wide range of issues, like lack of sleep. Like, why do you have a lack of sleep? Well, just taking a pill every night will not stop the lack of sleep. It'll get you sleep, but that doesn't fix the cause of you getting that. So it's systematic, and everybody's different. So my old boss from 6 years ago, he would drink 3 pitchers of coffee a day.
Wow.
Right? And he would get 4 hours of sleep a night.
Wow.
And I never saw that man tired. I never saw that man have any issues with his brain, with his memory. So telling him that too much coffee is bad for him isn't really true. I've seen people that drink 1 cup of coffee at 8 a.m. and they don't sleep well for the next 2 or 3 days. So just saying coffee's bad or coffee's good or something is good or bad is also not exactly true. Like drinking too much alcohol, yeah, sure. There are these over the top things that make sense. Like stop doing so much cocaine. It's bad for you. You do a little bit, it's fine, right? But you get my point, right? Which is that just saying something is good or bad isn't true either. And it's different for every single human out there.
Yeah.
So if anybody's just looking at you and saying, stop drinking because you won't be able to sleep. Personally, I have a little bit of like a whiskey at night. I'm out and I sleep great, like really good. And even like, the health things show me I sleep really well. So that's not exactly true, right? TV until 11 o'clock at night is bad for you. Is it? So that's the thing, right? Nobody out there really knows what's going to help you, the individual. So there's no reason to trust and do exactly what they're telling you. And for every person out there, every Andrew Huberman out there, there is a real doctor out there that will give you the different information. And that different information, if it sounds annoying or hard work, is probably closer to the truth.
Right. Yeah.
If it sounds easy, there's probably a scam around it.
Yeah.
Like the idea that you just put on glasses and you can sleep better.
That's ridiculous.
Right.
Ridiculous.
Right. And it's the same thing. You wear yellow glasses when you're hunting. You can see better. It doesn't. It helps with certain scenarios and certain things. It's all true about every medical piece of information out there. Yeah, it might help 3 or 4 people out of the 3 million that are listening, but that doesn't mean you should do it.
Spend $150 on it.
Yep.
It's pseudoscience.
It is pseudoscience. And that's how I look at it personally. Is if anybody's telling me this is bad or this is good, that means it can be good and it can be bad. And I trust my scientific method that I go through, which is changing a variable and verifying the outcome for me. And like I do something, there's no way you could do it because it would be bad for you and your sleep or your issues. Mm-hmm. So I know that like I can't drink coffee after 11 because I will stay up all night.
Yeah.
You can drink coffee and be okay. So
no, I can't.
You can't.
No.
Why didn't you ever tell me this? But that's what I mean. Is it's just different for everybody, and what works for one person doesn't work for everybody.
Yep.
So that's it.
I think an important part is the communication with a doctor, like a real doctor.
Your doctor.
On the ground doctor. Yeah.
And when I say your doctor, I mean your individual doctor.
Yeah.
And medicine and science are about patterns, right? Like, it's like, oh, I've got a burning in my chest. Well, what has changed? Has anything changed? Well, I've been eating a lot more spicy food. There you go.
Yeah. Yep.
Doesn't mean you need to go on high, blood pressure pills or anything like that.
So stay alert. There's no easy answers. And most people on TikTok or YouTube are trying to sell you something.
Or get views and
Get
followers.
views and followers. Nothing wrong with that.
Mm-mm.
But just know that that's the end game for everyone.
Yeah, and you can put it into perspective too of like the channel that you're on, the server that you're on, right? And the guys that were doing the videos.
Mm-hmm.
These are the 5 things that you need. And it was just, this guy was just walking around the grocery store picking up random, herbs and supplements and saying, this is what you need. Use this.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't know.
Yeah. Some 20-year-old making a TikTok video. Right. Seriously. And if it's on TikTok, really put on your skeptical hat. Skeptical hat and
right.
my skeptical glasses.
Right. So if you're on TikTok and someone's telling you the best eyeliner to buy, it's not going to hurt you to go try eyeliner, other than, you might get laughed at by your friends or something like that. But if they're telling you to go get a vascular constrictor because it makes your skin look better, run away, because it's bullshit.
Yeah. Yeah. So media literacy, that's the key thing when it comes to your health, I think.
Yeah. And again, if you have real medical advice, talk to your doctor, not a doctor. Because you also have to remember too, Jeremy Clarkson has an honorary doctorate.
Right. And Andrew Huberman's a doctor.
Yeah. And he obviously is giving some false information too.
Brian Johnson went to BYU.
Of course he did.
Of course he did. I mean, who wouldn't when you're Mormon? All right. Well, thank you for listening, watching.
Listen to me ramble.
Listening to us ramble, talking about people that I personally am oddly fascinated with, and understanding media literacy.
Right. And let's see if, we might actually live to see how long Brian Johnson lives.
I know. I have my thoughts, but I'm watching it very closely.
Give him 10 years.
10 years. Oh my goodness.
Doesn't a human need plasma?
Yeah. If you're looking for some weird pictures, look him up.
Yeah. And look up before and after too.
He's not a human looking person.
Not anymore.
Yeah.
Not anymore. All right, guys.
Thanks for listening.
Don't be a sheep.
Don't be